Welcome to the B2B Engagement Podcast. I'm your host, Gavin Finn of Can Interactive, and today we are privileged to have with us Meredith Stowell, who's the Vice President of the IBM Z ecosystem, where she leads both the IBM Z and the Linux One partner ecosystems. Welcome, Meredith.
Awesome, Gavin. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's such a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion because we have so many interesting topics to talk about in the realm of your role at IBM, but also in the way that you have created a community and an ecosystem, which really, I think, transforms the definition of engagement in the B2B world. And I think our listeners will have a lot to learn from you. So thanks so much for taking the time.
I'm absolutely looking forward to it.
Well, why don't we get started by perhaps you giving us a quick overview of your career and how you ended up leading these ecosystems for such an important part of the IT landscape.
Sure. So once again, Meredith Stowell. I lead today our IBM Z and Linux One ecosystem initiatives. And what that is all about is building and showcasing a diverse, sustainable, vibrant, skilled community of partners, of clients, of job seekers, influencers, but also our own team members that really drive our platform growth and retention and overall client success. Now, I have not been in infrastructure and in IT my entire career. In fact, I graduated with a degree in international finance and commerce and international business diplomacy. And if you had asked me then, are you going to be in IT, 20 plus years from now within your career, I would have said, what is IT? But what I did find is that I love analytics. In fact, a majority of my career was in analytics. And I love being able to improve overall performance and efficiency with the use of technology. And that's how I ended up where I am today, not only from helping clients to implement business intelligence and helping universities create some of the first business analytics and data science degree programs, but then coming over into IBM Z, which is really the platform and the infrastructure behind the global economy and behind so many transactions that are run out there, and really understanding what in the world happens behind that app that's on your phone, and how does it actually run, and how do you actually purchase things? When you tap that credit card, what's going on behind the scenes? And that's what we do here at IBM Z. And I will tell you, I have never met a more passionate and engaged community than that surrounds IBM Z.
It's fascinating, both on the career side, how you found a way to apply your intellectual curiosity, take your background, and really build on something that's important to the world, but also where you have great passion. The IBM Z has been around now, it's its 60th anniversary, I think, this year, or at least not the Z, but the mainframe has, and the Z is the latest incarnation. And so what's really transformative here is that it has an enormous impact and has had for so many years. And yet a lot of people outside of the IT community are not as familiar with just how important this mainframe community and the mainframe infrastructure really is. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about some of the ways that some of the world's largest and most important companies and organizations and governments use this infrastructure, as you said, to get many things done that we take for granted, that consumers see, and many things that we don't see.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it was funny when I first had the opportunity to come over to IBM Z and work with mainframes. I asked one of my colleagues who had worked over here, because I really wasn't familiar with it. And I said, tell me a little bit about IBM Z. Tell me a little bit about the mainframe. And she looked at me and she said, Meredith, all you need to know is that if your bank's not running on the mainframe and on IBM Z, you need to change banks. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. And let me dive a little bit deeper into that. And what exactly is this incredible processing machine doing behind the scenes? IBM Z runs 70% of the global transactions on a value basis. We have one client that runs over $2 quadrillion through these systems every year. It is used by over half of the Fortune 100 companies for activities like processing credit card transactions, ensuring that the ATMs are working, booking flights, processing checks, all of those things that really help keep the global economy running, and many of those things that you just expect to work. And in fact, if it ever goes down, it's not only going to have an impact to that business, it's going to have an impact to the overall society and the global economy. And so that's why I think that the community that runs these systems, that manages these systems, is so passionate about what they do, is because they truly care.
It's a really important part of the global economy and global societies at large. And one of the things that you point out, and that really sort of at the core, I think, of your role is that it's not just about building the hardware or making the software. It's about taking on a sort of a systems theory, thinking about how to make these kinds of highly scaled systems work. And, a lot of people think about IT as sort of hardware and software and maybe networking, and there's these sort of isolated silos. But what you've pointed out is that in order to really get a large scale series of both applications and data flows and solutions out there, you really need this system. And you've built a process around the ecosystem that's not just focused on the technical aspects, but as you pointed out, it's focused on the people, the organizations, the community. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit about sort of the philosophy behind, before we get into the details, but the philosophy around what an ecosystem means in the context of one of these large IT infrastructure projects.
Sure. I would say that ecosystem and community is more important now and today than it ever has been, because markets are moving fast. Innovation is moving so fast. And any one company, quite honestly, just can't do it on their own. You need that community of ecosystems, that community of partners that's working together to help solve some of the biggest challenges that are out there. And it comes back to that idea of diversity of thought, right? That's going to drive that innovation. How do you pull that community together? It's got to be engaging. There's got to be a win-win-win. And in fact, I like it to have like at least 4 or 5 wins in any given instance, whether you're looking at it from identifying a solution, whether you're looking at it to identify how can I innovate and leverage a specific technology. Let's talk about AI, right? There are so many things going on with AI right now, and AI isn't any one thing, right? There's Gen AI, there is traditional AI, and they don't replace one another. It's an and. And in fact, when you look at many things that are out there from a solution perspective with IT, there's a lot of and. It's not an or. And so ensuring that you're working with, whether it's your partners, whether it is academic, whether it's your clients, pulling all of that diverse thought together to really drive that innovation is what, to me, the community is all about. But it's also providing support to each other, right?
Mhm.
It's not just about looking at the business. Let's talk about skills. Skills always come top of mind anytime you're talking about anything IT related. And having a community to create that sense of belonging, for whether you're somebody that's new coming out to the community or whether you are someone that's been a part of this community for a long time, being able to give back, being able to have that overall sense of belonging is what matters. So as you said, it's not just about the technology that you build this community, but it's also about bringing that diverse thought where everyone can flourish and you can find that true win-win-win for everyone, because there's plenty of value that's out there. And there are also plenty of really difficult challenges to solve.
Well, I think that's true when you articulate it that way and when you bring that thought leadership to the table. But it's not intuitively obvious if you look at a lot of other organizations around the world. There's a lot of systems that tend to be more closed architecture, and they tend to be focused on a particular implementation of either hardware, software, networking, infrastructure, technologies. And I'm quite struck by the approach that you and the company have taken with respect to the openness of what that ecosystem needs to include, because it is really more of an open architecture when it comes to including different, I'm sure, ISPs, different academic organizations, those kinds of inputs that you talk about in terms of diversity of opinion. And what do you think it is about your organization and about the philosophy behind this that's led you to conclude that this ecosystem is the right approach when it really is relatively unusual in the industry, particularly today when there's such competition and where the drivers for competition around the particular individual technologies have led to what people perceive to be sort of commoditization.
That concept that there's only so much bandwidth, right? That any one group has. And also back to that diversity of thought of when we get together as an ecosystem, we can come up with new solutions that we would not have come up with on our own. And also the dedication that IBM has had to open source and open source communities for so many years. And we have found that it is very successful. Now, are there certain things that you might create and design internally?
Right.
Absolutely. But you don't build to just build. You build to solve problems and to really have the perspective of what those problems are and all of the different types of solutions. That option X that's out there is really bringing that community together. So let me give you a couple of examples. I'm going to go back to skills again. This is something that we've just recently done. And that is, as I travel around and I talk with partners, I talk with clients all over the world, there are this community is very passionate about finding solutions. And so you'll have, I see in different regions, different solutions to how can we create a diverse, sustainable workforce within IT. And for example, in Germany, they've got what they call an academic mainframe consortium, where you've got clients, you've got universities, you've got other members of the community coming together and helping universities incorporate mainframe content into their curriculum, helping them to actually have an IBM Z on campus and keep that up and running so that the students have a place where they can actually go and try it beyond other areas and ways to do that. You've got other clients like M&T Bank, and the things that they're doing with non-traditional workforce, really focused on bringing IT skills in from new underrepresented populations who have never had any IT experience whatsoever. And now they're system admins and now they're application developers, truly changing the workforce there in Buffalo. But what if we shared all of these, right? What if we pulled together all of these different regions and all of these different groups to share ideas, to share best practices? But there are also usually some common challenges where we don't have an answer for them. And how can we work together to solve some of those challenges? So that's where we just launched our Mainframe Skills Council, where we are going to provide that opportunity for the community to unite and to come together and to share ideas and not only learn from each other, but then also create innovative solutions together. We ask our community about what should the next solutions be? What is it that we should be designing for the future? Because that's one of the reasons this platform has been around for over 60 years, is because it is constantly evolving. You got to go where the puck's going to be, right? You got to know what's going on. So whether it's, for example, the Telum chip. So the Telum processor is one of the first processors, in fact, the first processor to contain on-chip acceleration for AI inferencing while that transaction is taking place. And it can help to prevent the fraud loss in banking and cards and payments. So you're infusing AI in every single transaction. Now, how in the world did we come up with that solution? And why did we put that out in the market when we put it out in the market? Well, because we asked our clients, we asked our users, what is the biggest challenge that you have with AI today? And it wasn't necessarily the training of the models. It wasn't the actual creation of the models. It was then actually taking that AI and those models and putting them into production so that you could actually run scoring of every single transaction as it goes through. So that's what we worked on. So those are just a couple of examples.
Yeah, they're very compelling examples. And I think, as you pointed out, there's a lot of centricity around skills training. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how you engage with people who are not already in the mainframe community, the IBM Z community, particularly given two sort of factors that we've seen across the globe. One is there's a tremendous amount of competition for, as you pointed out earlier, for IT skills in general. And there's a lot of flashiness and the latest shiny object. And the concept of mainframe infrastructure being so important and potentially so exciting for people is not necessarily something that people see in their B2C lives, in their general day-to-day lives. So there's a need to sort of educate and penetrate, I would imagine. And then the second big trend that we've seen, of course, is that there's a tremendous amount of interaction that people have in the digital world. So they're not necessarily going to a trade fair in person, but they're doing a lot of research online. They're engaging with people in video conferencing and all of that. So how do you use the current trend and capability of these digital engagement solutions to attract and to gain the attention of the highly skilled technical talent and those people who are going to be highly skilled technical community members in the future when they're so bombarded with all of the other potential career paths that they could go on?
So I'm going to start with new talent. There was a recent study that was done by IBM and a third party, and it was looking at, are people interested in STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, math. Are they even interested in these types of careers? And it looked at job seekers, students, career changers. But what they found is that while 50% wanted to pursue a STEM related job, 61% didn't think that they were qualified because they didn't have the right academic degree. 40% said that they didn't even know where to start. And 64% weren't even familiar with what the STEM jobs were. So that's where we started. And it also helped to validate some of the programs that we're doing of you need that awareness. You need to get the word out there that these jobs exist. You need accessibility. So accessibility to make it easy for them to learn, put it where they're going, right? Put it into the channels where they already are. Don't expect them to come to you. And then you need to provide the opportunity, right? You need to actually provide those job opportunities. And that's where we can work with the ecosystem to do that. And so that's how we have really taken a look at the different programs that we have. So from an awareness perspective, it's not just going to universities. We definitely do that. We definitely have what we would call kind of traditional outreach to university students. In fact, we have IBM Z student ambassadors who are inspiring that next generation of mainframers, because that peer-to-peer communication and influence is probably the most successful from what we found. They host events, they establish and lead mainframe student clubs on campuses. But we also work really closely with third parties that specialize in identifying and finding talent from non-traditional places. So for example, Franklin Apprenticeships, they not only are experienced in apprenticeship programs, but they're very experienced in how do you reach individuals that may have this hidden talent. They may be interested, but they've never been given the opportunity. So getting the word out as much as possible, but more importantly, going to where they are, not expecting them to come to you. Then back to that accessibility, and in the digital world, how do you get them engaged? Just having a website out there, or just having access to digital content or self-serve content or self-paced training, it's not enough, because you're going to get so far in the process and you're not going to know, you're going to have a question. You're going to get stuck. Everyone does at any given point within that. So who do you call, right? So to me, it's that combination of what I would call a digital assist, providing that opportunity for them to get going, get system access really quickly and easily in a digital way and in a self-serve way. But at all times, having somebody that they can go and talk to if they have a question. For individuals that they're going through training, making sure that we have open office hours, right? That they can come and talk to. Maybe they do the training, but then they have questions, come to the open office hours, because then that also allows them to meet others that are going through this. Have forums, whether it's on Discord, whether it's on Slack, whether it's within the different digital platforms that we're leveraging. Have that ability to connect.
Well, I think that's really smart in this lesson that you just shared. Is not necessarily limited to this particular domain. I think it ought to apply when you're building communities of any sort, is find ways to reach those individuals, have them have the ability to engage in a digital environment to the extent that that makes sense for them, and then also augment that with any in-person or other kinds of interaction that creates that sort of complete set of engagement to help them either solve the problem, answer a question, or move further down the process that they were originally on, the journey that they were on, right?
And I also think it's important to give them then that opportunity to give back to the community, because I think that's just as important.
No, I think that's critically important, because they then see themselves as having a leadership potential and an impact beyond the job that they happen to be in, right? It's more of that community. And
Exactly.
I think that's really important to engage, particularly younger people who are looking for ways to be impactful in the world. In that one way is to do a good job in your work, technically, or however else you're contributing, but also is to have some other community capability where you're part of a bigger sense of value. I wanted to ask another sort of dimension of how you found the ecosystem that you've been building, whether it's ISPs or academic partners or skills training or any of these others. How does that work with your sales and marketing teams as you go to market with these solutions? Is there a defined way that you collaborate with sales and marketing? Are you ever formally collaborating in a particular way where you're part of a marketing campaign or part of a sales effort as you build your ecosystem? And how do you partner with the other IBM organizations to advance your own business?
Great question. Great question. Absolutely. We are integrated with sales. We are integrated with marketing. We are integrated across the rest of IBM businesses, because just as you do outside of your ecosystem where you find the win-win-win, you also work internally to find the winning combination as well. So yes, we absolutely, it could be that we're supporting marketing, or marketing is supporting us, or sales is supporting us. But the sales team, the way I think about the sales team, they are the ones that are on the front line talking with our clients every single day, every day. So if there's a message that we want to get out, we've got to get it to our sales teams. You've got to enable that sales team to be your voice in the room when you're not there. So whether it's about the different initiatives that we have available through our ecosystem, whether it's a partner initiative, whether it's a sales team talking with a client and they identify, hey, you know what? It would be really great if we could have this partner involved in this, or it would be really great if we could recruit from this university or that university, or it would be really great if we could try out some of these other skill programs that we've heard of. Then, the sales team can come directly back to us and engage us in that client. And the same thing with marketing, right? It's just as important. Let me give you an example. Marketing can be interpreted in different ways, right? Because since we do work with a lot of the technical community really wants to engage directly with other technical peers. But marketing has this great engine behind them. They have a connection to different channels to help you really amplify your message. So for example, we have something called Today's Architects, and I am just thrilled with Today's Architects. These are the individuals that are out there working with our platform day in and day out and really ensuring that it's up and running and leveraging the latest and greatest of the technology and bringing in the latest innovations into their shops. And so leveraging marketing to help amplify that Today's Architect campaign is really providing us the ability to be heard in the market. Does that answer the question?
I think there's probably a lot more, but it certainly gave me a lot to think about, that's for sure. And, I'm wondering, as you've gone through this journey, not just within the ecosystem team, but the rest of the organization, what is it that you've given them that's enabled them to be better at their roles because they understand the value system that you've been able to create? How is that translated into either career growth or success?
I think that, oh my goodness, when you look at it, one of the things that I talk to my team about and to others is, how do you find the yes? It could be that you're coming into a conversation and you want to ask for something, and then the other person that you're having the conversation with or the other group may immediately say no, or they may say, hey, well, what I want to do is this. Well, don't just walk out of the room and say that you disagree. There's got to be a yes somewhere in between there. So have that patience, have that openness, have that growth mindset to identify, well, what is the yes? Because it could be something that is even better than the yes that you thought you wanted when you went into the room. And that's the same thing with your career growth, is always looking for and finding your passion, doing something that energizes you. And you may not know what that is. When you first go into an opportunity, it could be that you thought it was one thing, but the next thing you know, all of a sudden you're working on one little piece of it and you're like, wow, that's my jam. I love that. I had this one gal and she had gone through our IBM Z Explore program had never worked with mainframes before, anything like that. And I just remember her saying, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do this. I thought I wanted to do that. But she goes, but once I found COBOL, man, that was my thing. I absolutely love it. So you don't know until you try. And it is just as important to find out that you don't like something as it is to find out that you do like something. Within my career, I remember taking a role, I was doing sales enablement, and I was teaching about sales methodology, and I was teaching about transformation, and I was teaching about value selling. And an opportunity came up to really there was an underperforming team and they really wanted it transformed. And I'm like, wow, I can now take all of this enablement, the stuff that I've been teaching, and see if it really works. And either I am going to really succeed or I am going to completely fall on my face. And just being willing to take that risk and saying, okay, here I go. Let's see how it goes. It takes courage. So
Right.
have the courage to take the risk, and you never know, you might find your whole new passion in a whole new pathway. How I got here.
It's an amazing lesson, and I'm going to be presumptuous and say that I'm sure it was a huge success.
It was great. It was a lot of fun.
Meredith, as you talk about all of this, and we're getting ready to wrap up, I think there's some really valuable engagement lessons that executives can learn. And I'm going to summarize a couple of things, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about this. But the question to you, once I've quickly summarized what I think some of the most valuable lessons have been here today, is, what would you advise if a company or an organization was going to go out and build an ecosystem around their solutions? What is the key advice you would give the team that was going to be doing that? And as you're thinking about that, let me tell you what I think some of the most valuable lessons, and there have been many, but one I think that is applicable no matter what the role for the executive is, to think about the broader definition of customer success. And that broader definition isn't about one customer's success, it's about the community's success in terms of the entire industry or the region. So the way to really raise the level of abstraction about a focus for an executive, I think, is to broaden rather than narrow success criteria, whether you're in marketing or sales or any other environment. And that breadth that you've been able to provide has allowed for the growth and development of probably entire industries, not just from the perspective of individuals who now have a career and a passion that they're able to actually explore because of these opportunities, but because the industries have been able to grow because of the very nature of this openness and willingness to share and willingness to seek solutions outside of your silo and vertical. The other really important lesson that I think you've shared with us today, and that I think is generally applicable, is thinking about non-traditional ways to solve specific problems. For example, the skills shortage. Typically, one might think of, well, let's go to the computer science schools, let's go to the high concentration of developed IT networks and find people there. But what you've really shown is that there are lots of different ways of finding people who are very capable, but weren't necessarily aware and didn't have the opportunity to explore. And then the other key lesson that you shared with us is that you have to engage people where they are. You have to find the place where they are. You have to give them the opportunity to learn in a self-paced environment, and then reach out for help when it's appropriate or when they need it, so that you're not trying to have them fit into your model of the world. You're giving them the opportunity to see the world through their eyes and understand how you can play an important role, or this ecosystem can play an important role in their world. And I think those lessons are applicable across industries and across different functions, and are not limited necessarily to the work that you've done. And I would just ask you, as we close this today, what advice you would give people who are building these kinds of ecosystems, and how you would advise them to think about their world.
I think, you nailed it, Gavin, when you said it's about that thinking of customer success in a broader way. It's about going out, talking with the individuals whose solutions you want to solve, and get their ideas, get their thoughts, find out what they're interested in. But at the same time, don't go with a blank sheet of paper, go with some ideas. And it could be they totally knock down those ideas, and that's okay. because at least you gave them something to think about, something to start with.
Hmm.
And really look at that innovative way of solving things and innovative solutions. So I was listening to a podcast by Jeremy Utley on idea flow. And he was talking about how today, the economy is all about ideas. It's not just an economy of scale, right? It's not just an economy of ecosystems. That next big thing, it's ideas. And it comes to how quickly can you come up with these ideas, because you can turn them around and try them so much quicker today because of AI and some of the capabilities from a technology perspective. But then he said, but what is an idea? What is innovation? And innovation could mean almost anything. Well, maybe it's, when you think about innovation, it means being creative. Well, what's the definition of creative? And he heard from, I think it was somebody in maybe fifth grade, a little girl in Ohio, who gave the best definition of creativity. And it is do more than the first thing that comes to your mind. So for example, when you're thinking about where am I going to recruit? Where am I going to find talent? To your point, yeah, well, the first thing that's going to come to mind is a university. But what else? What other ways can you do this? What are some innovative ways that you haven't thought of? What's that second, third, fourth thought, an idea to really be creative? So that's one of the things that I definitely would recommend is, one, listen to your clients, go and ask so many people before you start taking action, but also start small and then build. Focus on scale, because if you try to go for perfection first, you're never going to get there, and it's never going to get out the door. So be open to that feedback, be vulnerable, and do that next thing beyond the first idea and the first thing that comes to mind.
Well, those are indeed wise words, Meredith. Thank you so much for the time. And it's been a real delight. I hope we get an opportunity to talk again soon.
Great. Thank you, Gavin.